Pakistan floods, a mega-disaster of biblical or epic proportions. The number of people suffering from the massive floods in Pakistan exceeds 13 million, more than the combined total of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the 2005 Kashmir earthquake, and the 2010 Haiti earthquake. The death toll in each of those three disasters was much higher than the 1,600 people killed so far in the floods that first hit Pakistan 2 weeks ago. But the United Nations estimates that at least 13.8 million people have been affected, over 2 million more than the other disasters combined. The comparison helps frame the scale of the crisis, which the Prime Minister said was the worst in Pakistan's history, or the worst that anybody can possibly remember. It has overwhelmed the government, generating widespread anger from flood victims who have complained that aid is not reaching them quickly enough or at all. The number of people affected by the floods is greater than the other three disasters combined, said a spokesman for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. A person is considered affected by the floods if he or she will need some form of assistance to recover, either short-term humanitarian aid or longer-term reconstruction help. The total number of people affected in the three other disasters was about 11 million, 5 million in the tsunami and 3 million in each of the earthquakes. The Pakistani Prime Minister said that the floods were a bigger crisis than the 2005 Kashmir earthquake that killed nearly 80,000 people in the Army's operation against the Taliban in the Swat Valley last spring that drove more than 2 million people from their homes. The magnitude of the tragedy is so immense that it is hard to assess. Many of the people affected by the floods, which were caused by extremely heavy monsoon rains, were in Pakistan's northwestern province. Rescue workers have been unable to reach up to 600,000 people marooned in the province's Swat Valley, where many residents were still trying to recover from last year's fight with the Taliban. Bad weather has prevented helicopters from flying to the area, which is inaccessible by ground. Hundreds of thousands of people have also had to flee rising floodwaters in recent days in the central and southern provinces of Punjab and Sindh, as heavy rains have continued to pound parts of the country. One affected resident said that although he managed to escape floods that submerged villages and destroyed homes in Sindh, the total lack of government help meant dying may have been a better alternative. It would have been better if we had died in the floods, as our current miserable life is much more painful, said the man, who fled with his family and spent the night shivering in the rain that has continued to lash the country. It is very painful to see our people living without food and shelter, he also said. Thousands of people in neighboring districts camped out on roads, bridges, and railway tracks, any dry ground they could find, often with nothing more than the clothes on their backs and perhaps a plastic sheet to keep off the rain. An Associated Press reporter who traveled widely through the worst-hit areas in Sindh over the past 3 days saw no sign of relief camps or government assistance. The floods hit the country at a time when the government is already struggling with a faltering economy and a brutal war against Taliban militants that has killed thousands of people. The U.S. and other international partners have donated tens of millions of dollars and provided relief supplies and assistance. A faltering relief effort could open the door to hardline Islamist groups which have already been delivering aid in the northwest. In other words, the government of Pakistan is failing. And things are starting to get out of control because Pakistan has been devastated by a massive floods. A huge catastrophe on a scale, again, like nobody can remember. And in China, mudslides devastate Chinese towns. Death toll rises to 337, and over 1,000 people are still missing. The disaster struck Sunday as a debris-blocked swollen river burst, swamping entire villages and ripping homes from their foundations. It is the deadliest incident in China's worst flooding in more than a decade. Meantime, rescuers armed with little more than shovels searched for hundreds of people after a torrent of mud engulfed the town, tearing down homes and filling the streets with thick mud. Upstream from the disaster, demolition experts and geologists were working frantically to drain a lake that had built up behind a barrier of landslide blockage. With more heavy rains forecast for this week, there would be fresh tragedy at the unsecured dam burst, creating a new mud flow. 6,000 troops, police, and firefighters worked through the night to dig out survivors through the thick slurry of mud that devastated the worst-hit areas. Over a meter deep in many areas, the mud or mire has made it almost impossible for rescue teams to bring in vital heavy equipment. Streams of refugees trekked out of the area, some carrying a few possessions they had managed to salvage, others with a much grimmer load. The bodies of loved ones killed by the sludge, the official China Daily newspaper said. Power lines are down in 2/3 of the county, and water up to 13 feet deep is still surging through some parts of the villages and towns. At least 45,000 people have been evacuated, including the residents of downstream towns thought to be at risk from a fresh mudslide, and some 1.1 million homes have been destroyed this season in China, with many other thousands missing or dead from massive landslides and heavy rains. And in Russia, the capital city of Moscow, heavy, thick smog is still choking. And all these are more signs. Yes, climate change, global warming, whatever have you call it, is real. It's happening right now. These are signs that something's wrong with the weather. And all these are more signs in end times, transition days, which is a process. In other words, everything that must change quickly or rapidly, and for the better, because it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations. Revelation chapter 15. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. 2. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. 3. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. 4. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest. Yes, it's time. And there are many different signs happening, day by day, all around the world.